Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here. Today's video we're going to go on a little adventure. We're going to go in what locally we call the West Desert, which is the Great Basin Desert here in northern Utah. We're actually going to go visit the Pony Express route, and we're going to stop at some Pony Express stations and take a look at some old ruins while we're out there, and we're going to visit Simpson Springs and talk about the historical and prehistorical significance of that site. So we're going to go ahead and hop in the War Pony and get on out of here. Here at the Maverick gas station, you still have echoes of the past. The name Maverick, actually, I remember back in the 90s, this store heavily themed on this sort of Wild West Pony Express kind of idea. They had a character, kind of like a mascot named Maverick, and they even had cartoons on the little trays that you could get your hot dogs or your nachos in, and they had little cartoons of the adventures of Maverick. So they've changed quite a bit, and instead now they're like, hey, look, whatever adventure you're going to go on, stop here first. But you still look at the top, they still have sort of that motif. They used to have it literally look like a saloon. You would walk in and there was kind of bars around the edges, like you could hitch your horse up there. And they very much, that was sort of their old motif. And they still sort of have that idea. But it's interesting to still see echoes in the Wild West, as everywhere I'm driving around, I'm just seeing a bunch of gray rectangles as modern society is filling in. So it's going to be nice to get away from all this and be back in the spirit of the Wild West and see if we can get out to some really good open desert country. Well, this kind of makes me sad to see the roadkill jackrabbit. Roadkills sadly happen all over the place, but we've had a drought and our rabbit numbers have crashed in the past decade and a half. And jackrabbits are the lifeblood of this desert region. Everything survives off it, goes up through the food chain. The badgers, the coyotes, the foxes, and especially the golden eagles. And in their absence, those predators turn on other things, like they'll start hunting sage grouse, they'll start hunting each other, and it has a trickle-down effect that just affects everything. Of course, sadly, animals do get hit by cars, but where there are so few jackrabbits right now, it makes me sad just to to see this. I would rather that this jackrabbit had gotten, eaten by an eagle or something. But hopefully at night, maybe a coyote will come along and eat it as a midnight snack. This is the Rush Valley Pony Express station. The Pony Express station went from about like 1860 to 1861, basically lasted 1 year. And what it was the precursor to modern communication. Now, a lot of people think that it got replaced by the telegraph. It actually didn't. The telegraph already existed at the time of the Pony Express, but it didn't exist out west. It was something that happened back east. Telegraphs had telephone lines, but they were telegraph lines, and they would just hit a little beep, 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 and use Morse code to transfer from station to station. But out here in the West, communication was all done, just by horseback. And so somebody came up with a great idea of, hey, why don't we make up something called the Pony Express? And what they did, they would put stations all along the Pony Express route. And at these stations, like this one here, the Rush Valley station was at this location, you would have horses stabled here. And you would have a rider who would get on a horse, and they would take the mail, take the messages, and they would ride as fast as they could to the next station. to the point of exhaustion for the horse. Then they would hop off that horse, get on a fresh new horse at that station, and keep going. So the rider would keep going and going and going. Now you can get a message clear across the country in just a couple of days. So it's a pretty amazing idea. It's got this rich legacy that everybody talks about, but again, it was only around for like a year and a half. And when you look around this area, this is pretty bleak. It was wetter in the 1800s here, and there would have had to have been some sort of a spring nearby, because there is no water anywhere near here, and you have to not only feed yourself and water yourself, but also the horses. So this landscape is still changing and becoming more and more arid in the modern day. But you look around and it would be quite a bleak life, or quite a peaceful and open life, depending on how you view it. But even today, this area is still the Wild West. I can hear gunshots in the distance, people target shooting. And if you look at everywhere there's a Pony Express sign on the road, there are bullet holes through it. And that really is kind of the attitude of the American West, is this free-spirited, nobody's going to tell me what to do, forget speed limits, forget social order. There's kind of this free sense, and this open country, I think, really kind of opens your mind in that way. It just thinks like, wait a minute, why am I having to, just adhere to societal norms? It's like, well, hey, the idea of being free is very much kind of a very Western motif that we see. And so again, every time I see a sign on this road filled with bullet holes, instead of being like, oh, how disrespectful, I'm almost like, yep, that's part of the scenery. Well, we're going to keep on going, and we're going to, so again, we're going to go to Simpson Springs, which was a major station. But this here is the Rush Valley station, and there's nothing left of the actual original archaeological site other than this monument commemorating it. It used to be, again, here in the West, the only way to get any goods or services across was, by a wagon. And the only way to get the word out was by horseback. The telegraph changed that, and then soon came afterwards the railroad. And the Transcontinental Railroad connected here in northern Utah at a place called Promontory Point. And once that happened, then telegraph wires ran all alongside the railroad, and that just made it so you had the ability to transport people and transport goods, transport information clear across the country in what was comparatively almost instantaneously. So really, it's right here in this intersection where you've got the Transcontinental Railroad, and you've got what once was the telegraph lines, and we're crossing the opposite way on the Pony Express route. So it's just kind of an interjunction of history right here. I decided to pull over and check out this spring over here. Here in the desert, anywhere there's water is just going to be loaded with life. You probably can't hear it because I got the mic so close to me. There's a bunch of red-winged blackbirds over there that are talking and making all this song, and a couple of sandhill cranes flew in just as I pulled up, and it's a beautiful spot. I often see coyotes in here. There's a lot of life in this area. I'm going to run the drone over and take a quick look. But just seeing this area, sometimes this spring fills up quite a bit with all the runoff, and sometimes it's almost empty, but it always pulls in life, and it's a beautiful area. And it's always important to remember the most important thing in the desert is water above all else, both for human life as well as animal life and plant life. And anywhere in the desert that you have water, you will instantly have life. Now, last year, right on this section of road, there was a nest of a little bird called a killdeer. Killdeers are really interesting because they will nest oftentimes in parking lots or like in gravel right next to the road. So I'll show you that clip from last year of this mother killdeer, but their eggs blend in so well with the gravel or the rocks. And if you find their nest, then the mother will try to get your attention. She'll scream and squawk at you and pretend she has a broken wing to try to lure you away. It's a fascinating survival strategy, and it usually works. But if you know where the nest is, then you can get right up and film it. I wanted to stop really quick. I got a little bit of history on this section of mountain here, and it also shows how delicate this environment is. So if you look behind me, you'll see where the juniper trees are growing, and then there's an abrupt stop, and you can just see the whiteness of the snow. This area, back in the 90s, there was a fire here, a big old range fire. And my best friend Jason and I, we loved this desert so much. We could see the plumes of smoke from several valleys over from the Salt Lake Valley. And we burned rubber out here. The road was way worse back then, and we're just out here and we're like, oh, and there were a few range fighters fighting it, firefighters, firefighters fighting it. And we were like, we're here to help. They're like, you're just some dumb kids. And we're like, this is our desert. We're going to save it with you. And they're like, well, okay, grab some shovels. And so we went up there on that ridge and helped dig trenches to stop the flow. And you can see a very strong line where we finally got it to end. We worked our butts off. But it's interesting, it's 2025. That was probably like 1996. And you can see it hasn't bounced back. So these ecosystems of the desert are so fragile, both from the sagebrush country to the juniper country. Any change to it will last for a long time. It takes a long time to bounce back. It's not like hardwood forests or some of the fir tree forests that just bounce back. So I always got to be very mindful with our impact on the landscape as well. This was a natural range fire started by lightning, but still, you can see just how long it takes to grow back. Taking a quick stop here to see the memorial of E. Ray Staley, who was an innovator in the sheep ranching industry. And this pass we're on right here is Lookout Pass, and this is was and still is a thoroughfare for sheep ranchers, because when you're going to move them to different grazing or you're going to move them to be shorn, you have to have these pathways. Nowadays, it's mostly changed. Mostly these shepherds are using just like trucks. You're just going to load them all into trucks and ship them. It's a lot easier. But this is one of the last ones in the country where they'll take them from one area to another and they have to go up over Lookout Pass. I've seen it once or twice in process, and it's amazing to see just hundreds and hundreds of sheep coming through here. But this memorial to E. Ray Staley goes, he lived from 1920 to 1993. Which is just right around the same time that I was helping put out those range fires just around the corner. So it's odd to me now, it's 2025. And it's strange for me to say the 1900s. They're over, and they're a quarter of a decade over. That's very strange for me. I still feel very young, and it's amazing how fast time flies. And that a memorial like this, even 1993, is starting to sound like a long time ago, even though it's not by my reckoning. So, but this time of year, it's amazing up here just how much snow there is. I've just 5 minutes down the road, I was just surrounded by sagebrush and desert, and that elevation changed so quick. You're in snow. It's really muddy. I'm having to use a four-wheel drive to get around here, but that's okay. That's all part of the fun. Well, we're going to keep going and keep on heading towards Simpson Springs. We've got the Lookout Pass Pony Express monument here. It's too muddy though. I'm not going to get out to look at this one, but we'll take a good gander here. So it's interesting again, thinking that there were people who lived here, and this area, there's no running water currently. There's drainages, but there would have had to have been some sort of spring here or guzzler or something, both for the horses and the people who lived here. But this is where the station was. It's kind of a good sheltered area. And over there is a pet cemetery. It's kind of an odd thing, but it's interesting to have something like that out here. And I understand that people still do bury their pets there. Lookout Pass. Now I'm through Lookout Pass, and you can see on the other side, you see all that white mountain. All of that is the other side of the mountain that all got burned down. And everything in front of you, all that yellow, all of that used to be rich juniper forest. And what was really interesting about this area is there used to be a huge colony of long-eared owls. Long-eared owls are an interesting species. They look like a great horned owl, but they only weigh about 1/4 of the weight of a great horned owl. And sometimes, but not always, they will nest in colonies. And so this whole forest, I think one time we found, I think we counted 20 separate long-eared owl nests that were in this forest here. And but that forest hasn't existed since the 90s. And now it's just open grazing, and the cattle come in there and eat. And I think you can see one of them right now. No, over there a little. I don't know if I can see it through here, but anyways, there it is. I've happened across a big old herd of sheep. It's awesome to see him out here. And you know, it's interesting, it's easy in our big cities to not think about what it takes for people to raise sheep for wool or to raise, cattle for food. We don't think about that, and it's easy to not realize that every sheep out here represents financial investment and hard work and effort, and the loss of any one of these causes problems. It's just like if a predator comes and takes out one of these animals, then it causes damage to, it'd be like somebody robbing your bank account. And you would probably have an opinion about that. So an interesting thing I want to point out about this, as a falconer, in the United States, our falconry laws are extremely strict, more so than most any other country. And one of the things is, golden eagles kill sheep, especially during lambing season, which is just around the corner. And if you have golden eagles killing sheep, you can understand a sheep rancher wanting to stop that, or, illegally shooting an eagle. But eagles should be protected as well. So what do you do about it? Well, there is a program set up, and it was going really good. There's not very many eagle trainers in the United States. It takes a lot of work to get a permit to be able to work with an eagle. I've flown several. But we had a good system set up where if you had a permit, then a rancher who was raising sheep, if there was an eagle that came along and was attacking the sheep, then that is considered a depredation situation. So that rancher could go out and talk to the government, and they would bring an agent out and they'd assess, yep, there's an eagle that's killing sheep, and they would contact one of us falconers with an eagle permit. We would go, we would trap the eagle, remove it from the area, take it back to our home state, and then train it and use it for falconry. And problem solved, and the eagle isn't killed. But there's been a lot of pushback, and that's been limited. So right now, unfortunately, there's only, I believe, 11 permits issued right now in the United States per year for eagle falconers to be able to trap eagles that are doing this problem, where the problem is rampant. And so that's actually really kind of a bad thing. It's like if they're causing a problem, the ranchers are just going to kill them. I mean, think about it. If you're out here and there's nobody out here and you're calling and you're like, hey, I need somebody to come get this eagle off my property. It's killing my sheep. It's killing my livelihood. And you're like, well, there was only 11 eagle trapping permits issued, so too bad. Well, what's the rancher going to do? Out here, nobody around, blam. They're just going to shoot the eagle. So it's really should be more open is what I really think. Oddly, supposedly, wind energy is supposedly such a great thing and so good for the environment, but the wind industry in America has been given a blank check, so to speak, to kill as many eagles as possible. They don't get in trouble. If they kill an eagle, no problem. But if an eagle falconer wants to get a permit to go and trap an eagle that's killing sheep, then we get a little bit of trouble. So hopefully that can work out better like it used to be, where it used to be any eagle falconer could help out with the program. And again, 11 is still better than nothing. But again, I'm out here and I haven't seen anybody forever, so that's a huge issue. It's wild. Out here behind me is the famous Dugway Proving Grounds. Now, Dugway is a military base, and as I've been told by people who work on there, it's a joint venture between the Army and the Air Force. And what they do out there, they don't exactly tell you. A lot of it's pretty secret. But the interesting thing about this, almost everything you see behind me, and as it extends, is all military range. So the bad news is that you can't go out there. It looks pristine and open, but when you get down there to the fences, if you get near it, they will escort you off. The good news is it's preserved wide range in habitat and also preserved a lot of archaeology and paleontology. This entire area used to be ancient Lake Bonneville, and once it receded down at the end of the Ice Age, this whole area was vast grasslands that appeared, figuratively overnight. Oh, just a sec, we got a guy going by there. Got some ATVers driving past, people getting out in the nature. So what happened out here was all of this was silty, and it was lake bed, and grass is the first plant to come in and proliferate. And when it did, you had a lot of grazers like woolly mammoths and wild horses that used to be here, the extinct American wild horse and American zebras. You also had browsers such as camels. And you had Ice Age hunters that came in and followed those herds and hunted them here. Now, right behind me, out on those flats, I talked to some archaeologists, and it's been in the news recently as well, that there's areas that have been untouched because it was a military base, and they have found Clovis culture butcher sites where ancient Ice Age hunters killed and butchered woolly mammoths and Ice Age American camels. And they even found, and they tested, there was still DNA residue left on the butchering tools themselves, and they found camelid DNA and mammoth DNA. So it's pretty incredible. And so it's again one of those things like, if you're gonna gobble up tons of our land, well, that's kind of sad that you can't go see some of these beautiful areas. But at the same time, people always steal, illegally take artifacts and ruin and damage archaeological sites. So these archaeological and paleontological sites have inadvertently been preserved because of the presence of the military here. We've got another herd of sheep up on the ridge, and I don't know if you can hear from here, but there's bells, and it's just awesome. It's just so cozy hearing the sheep. And there's a lot of shepherds out this year, and they have a modern setup. They have horses in back of that, but they also have an ATV, and they have their dogs out, and seems like a peaceful way to live. I'm gonna take a look at those sheep. I've made it all the way out to Simpson Springs, and I'm here behind me with a reconstruction of the original cabin of the Pony Express station here at Simpson Springs. Now, there's a monument here behind me as well, commemorating the site. This is one of the best preserved sites with some of the most material left, because not only is there this reconstruction here, but there's also over here another cabin. Well, it's not a cabin, it's actually made out of stone, and it was actually what's left of the original station, but it's not in the way you think. You see, after this station was abandoned, then there was a man named Alvin Adams who took what was left over and made a cabin or a little home out here. And he was going to live out here with his wife and his unborn child. Unfortunately, his wife died in childbirth, so he never even lived in it. But what's left of that structure is here, and that is the original masonry and stonework from the original cabin. And this right here is a remake of what it must have looked like. But in this area around here, this was a very important area for Native Americans. There's caves in the area up above where Native Americans lived and hunted. And again, anytime you have desert, you are going to bring in, anywhere there's water, you're going to bring in both predators and prey. Stuff to be hunted and stuff to provide fur and bones and tools. But there's also a very, right along where the spring goes, it's not very bright right now, but there is a plant here, and it's called dogbane. And dogbane was used by Native Americans to make rope, a very strong, easy to make rope. Now that's used for all kinds of things, from fletching arrows to making nets for catching fish. And out here, many of the tribes would make big old huge nets, and they'd get everybody together, and they would flush rabbits, and they would flush them into the nets and catch them in this way. So this was a very interesting area because of that, because you had so much occupation of humanity. Ever since the end of the Ice Age, people have been coming to Simpson Springs. But we're going to take a look around at some of the other ruins in the area, and we're going to take a look at some of these springs. Got some droppings up there. Looks like some birds like to roost in here. Oh yeah. It's a nest of a swallow up there. It's not in use right now, but it's a pretty protected place. Can you imagine living out here in the 1800s? And you come out, and this is what you see. No other humans for miles and miles around. It'd be peaceful. It'd be pretty lonely too. There's a roost too. You can see that poop. That might be from the swallow, or that actually looks more like it could be from an owl. Here's what's left of the home that Alvin built. And he built these stones he took from the original Pony Express station, and he built this home. But then the original would have looked more like that. As arid as this landscape is, it's amazing how much life is actually here. And again, the whole reason is because of water. Simpson Springs itself has a spring that bubbles up year-round, and it fuels all kinds of plants that are much more nutritious for the animals to eat, and it provides life-giving water. So it brings everything in the area. And just over here are some reed beds where you have all kinds of different reeds and Ravenna grass and different kinds of marsh plants, because you have a marsh here in the middle of the desert. Shouldn't be here. And actually, every year there is a pair of northern harriers that nest here. Harriers are a very odd species of bird of prey. They are extremely buoyant. They have a wingspan as big as a golden eagle, but they're so buoyant that they rock and float just kind of like a little helicopter, and they kill stuff and they can just fly through the marshlands without having to hardly flap at all. But they're a bird of the marshes, and usually a marsh doesn't have trees. So oddly, this species nests on the ground, and I think I have some pictures that I can put up that of this nest in years past. It's odd that you can nest right on the ground and not get eaten by predators. But year after year after year, this pair nests here every year. And oddly, a strange thing, unusual for birds of prey, usually birds of prey mate for life. But oddly, harriers have such a high mortality rate that they will often be polygamous, and they'll have more than one mate. And this pair routinely does as such, where there's one male and two females, and they will maintain two nests together. It's very unusual. But this area is beautiful. So we're going to go ahead and fly the drone over there and take a look and see what it looks like now. And I'm gonna come back in a few months or maybe just 1 month when it's all green again, and try to get some footage of the northern Harriers here as well. There's some ruins over there. Haven't been to them in years. There's some along here, almost like a granary. And I think these are fairly modern. I'm gonna go check them out. It's kind of an odd structure. It's got a cement ceiling. And I recognize this webbing. This is, I don't know if you can see it, but this is all black widow webbing. He's probably hibernating right now. There's also a lot of, how was I gonna zoom in here? Right there, it's a praying mantis egg sac. It looks like a lot of things come through here, but there's not much room. It's like 10 feet by 10 feet maybe. Don't know if somebody lived here or if there was storage, but there's another structure, smaller, just over here. I'll go take a look at that. This is strange. There's only maybe 3 feet by 3 feet. There's timbers on the back on either side, but there's no sign. I mean, there's some charcoal here, but there's absolutely no soot on the ceiling, so it doesn't seem like this was used for cooking. But yeah, it's like 3 feet by 4 feet, and it's just sort of built into a natural alcove there. Don't know what that was for. It's so peaceful out here. It is so peaceful out here. There's something to be said about getting out in nature. It declutters the mind, you know, on the way out here, surrounded by all the gray rectangles of the city and all the stoplights. Go here, stop, start, stop. And this out here, your brain just relaxes and decompresses. I think it's good for the soul. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for this channel. I'm hoping that taking you on some of these adventures, you can learn a thing or two and maybe get a little bit of a sense of being outdoors if you don't have the chance yourself. So if you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe, really helps me keep this channel up and going. It's a way you can support me. And just always remember, life is an adventure. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.